Welcome back, dear friends, to another exciting episode of the Dispensation of Baha'u'llah. We are on part 5, part 2. And without any further ado, we'll have our opening prayer. Thank you so much.
Oh God, my God, this is a broken-winged bird, and his flight is very slow. Assist him so that he may fly towards the apex of prosperity and salvation. Wing his way with the utmost joy and happiness throughout the limitable space. Raise his melody in thy supreme name. In all the regions, exhilarate the ears with this call, and brighten the eyes by beholding the signs of guidance. O Lord, I am single, alone and lowly. For me, there is no support save thee, no helper except thee, and no sustainer beside thee. Confirm me in thy service. Assist me with the cohorts of thy angels. Make me victorious in the promotion of thy word, and suffer me to speak out thy wisdom amongst thy creatures. Verily, thou art the helper of the weak and the defender of the little ones. And verily, thou art the powerful, the mighty, and the unconstrained. Abdullah.
Thank you very much, dear Tesfai. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, dear friends, let's get back to our session. So, dear friends, let me share my screen. Okay, so in our last session, we were covering paragraphs 13 through 15. Okay, and in these paragraphs 13 through 15, if you recall, in our last session, we were studying together. We were talking about Islam, and especially the divine origin of Islam. Okay, and in this, let me make sure everyone. Don't forget, dear friends, to mute yourselves in case so there's no background noises, okay? And so in our last session, we were talking about the divine origin of Islam. And the beloved guardian referred to Islam as the source and background of this faith. And the Baha'i faith emerged in an Islamic environment. And the early believers in the Blessed Bab and Baha'u'llah were Muslims, and a significant proportion of the arguments and proof in the sacred Baha'i writings were elucidations and interpretations of the content of the Quran and the Islamic traditions. So this is all review, dear friends. So accordingly, Baha'is must strive to acquire a sound knowledge of the history and tenets of Islam. And the study of Islam and the Quran equips the believers with a background against which to study the Baha'i writings. And as mentioned in our last session, over the centuries, there has been a great deal of misrepresentation of Islam and misunderstanding of its teachings. And this is confirmed by the beloved guardians. And this is a quote from the beloved guardian, and is cited in Lights of Guidance. He states, Western historians have for many centuries distorted the facts to suit their religious and ancestral prejudices. And if you recall, in our last session, I cited from Dante. And so this is from Dwayne Troxell. This is from his book, Islam and the Baha'i Faith, A Brief Guide. He writes, for hundreds of years, our knowledge of Muhammad, the Holy Quran, and Islam in general has come to us through biased intermediaries. Literary geniuses such as Dante, Shakespeare, Gibbon, Saul, Thomas Carlyle, and Washington Irving have transmitted to us opinions of the Arabian prophet, which at the best can be described as damning with faint praise, and at worst, to believing him worthy of hell's greatest torments. So in our last session, I quoted from Dante, And Dante really was in his great the travels of Dante through the levels of hell in his great poet masterpiece. He has placed Muhammad in one of the absolute worst circles of hell. And so this is believing him worthy of hell's greatest torment. And so this is where Dante has placed His Holiness Muhammad. The beloved guardian emphasizes in his writings that the Baha'is should deepen their knowledge of Islam based on unbiased and reliable sources. They should try to study history anew and to base all their investigations first and foremost on the written scriptures of Islam and Christianity. So this is from Lights of Guidance. They should try to study history anew, not through the lens of history, because history often is written biased. Anyone can write history and write it through their distorted lens. But the beloved guardian says, read the histories through first and foremost on the written scriptures of Islam and Christianity, through that lens. So this would be the independent investigation of the truth. Look to the scriptures. There is so much misunderstanding about Islam in the West in general that you have to dispel. Your task is rather difficult and requires a good deal of erudition. This is all from the beloved guardian. Your chief task is to acquaint the friends with the pure teaching of the Prophet as recorded in the Quran, and then to point out how these teachings have, throughout succeeding ages, influenced, nay, guided the course of human development. In other words, you have to show the position and significance of Islam in the history of civilization. So this is about vindicating the truth and principles and teachings of Islam in the West. Vindicate, meaning prove Islam is true. Vindicate, proof that it's true. So this is the challenge, because the West has misrepresented it, misunderstood, and through bias from hundreds of years been heaped upon the name of Islam, that now as a Baha'i, we have to vindicate the truth of Islam. So we have to be erudite, we have to be knowledgeable about the truth of Islam. And how do we do that? First, we have to, and foremost, we have to turn to the scriptures. So as Baha'is, we have to be knowledgeable about Islam and Christianity. Right? So that is an incredible task. And so one of the great documents that we have, little books, is Marzieh Gale. She's written 6 lessons on Islam. It's pretty short, but it's a wonderful read. Marzieh Gale suggests, to study Islam, we need new books, because those old books were biased. So we need to have new books. We need a re-evaluation by future Baha'i scholars. And we have some wonderful Baha'i books now in this day and age, past Marzieh Gale. So there's wonderful books that we can turn to. We need a re-evaluation by future Baha'i scholars of all the available data in the light of Baha'u'llah's teachings. The guardian told the pilgrim that the Baha'is must vindicate Islam in the West. We must convert people not to its institutions, now abrogated by the Bab and Baha'u'llah, but to its truth as a further step in divine revelation following Christianity. So it's just one more chapter of truth. This is what Islam is. If the whole thing is truth, you're just sharing more truth with the friends. This is another chapter in the unfoldment of faith, the faith of God. So this is on succession to Muhammad. Immediately after the ascension of Muhammad, the issue of his successor became a major cause of disunity and division among the Muslims. A group of prominent Muslims gathered and they elected Abu Bakr as the caliph or successor to Muhammad. At this meeting, Ali, the son-in-law of Muhammad, was absent. At the same time, a group of Muslims believed that Ali should have been chosen as the successor to Muhammad in light of the close relationship between Ali and Muhammad, and also based on a number of his statements made by Muhammad during his lifetime. And this is from Mojan Momen's great book, An Introduction to Shia Islam, which I encourage the friends to get a copy of. And this is a wonderful source to get to that introduction to Islam, is Mojan Momen's book. Abu Bakr's caliphate lasted only 2 years and ended with his death. On his deathbed, Abu Bakr appointed Omar as his successor, and hence the leadership of Ali was again denied. Omar in turn appointed a council of 6 to decide the leadership after him. The council was composed in such a way that Ali did not have the support to be elected as the successor. This time, Osman was elected as the next caliph. Osman's caliphate proved a disgrace to Islam and caused a great deal of dissatisfaction. Eventually, Osman was murdered by forces rebelling against his rule. Immediately, a group of Muslims surrounded Ali and urged him to accept the caliphate. Ali became the 4th caliph and finally achieved his rightful position 24 years after the death of Muhammad. Though initially accepted by all the Muslims as the 4th caliph, Ali received a great deal of opposition from different directions and was forced into war with them, and he was finally assassinated in January of 661. After Ali, a group of Muslims accepted Hassan, his son, as his successor, and the second rightful imam. They are known as Shia Muslims, whereas the majority who did not follow Hassan are known as Sunni Muslims. The hereditary succession in Shia Islam continued until the 11th imam, who had no son to succeed him. After his death, the Shia Muslims were thrown into confusion and broke up into 20 different sects. And that's just the major 20 sects. There's so many more, actually. The imamate ended as there was no successor. Based on the authoritative interpretation made by His Holiness Abdul Baha of the Zoroastrian prophecy, Shoghi Effendi concludes that the imamate was the divinely appointed institution after the death of Muhammad. So this is also review for you, dear friends. I wanted to hit on some of these important points. And this is from the Quran. This is from the 6th surah. It says, surely those who divide the religion into sects and identify themselves as a sect, O Muhammad, you have nothing to do with them. Their case will be called to account by Allah himself. He will inform them as to what they did. So you can see, literally right after Muhammad passed, they divided his faith. And in the Quran, it says, Muhammad is saying, those who divide the religion into sects and identify themselves as a sect, Muhammad will have nothing to do with them. Right there, Quran, Surah 6, verse 159. So now we're getting into paragraph 15 of Dispensation of Baha'u'llah. Paragraph 15. The beloved guardian explains the Zoroastrian prophecy, further recognizing and confirming the independence of the dispensation of the Blessed Bab as a direct revelation from God, despite its very short duration. The dispensation of the Blessed Bab was ordained to be very brief and was to be succeeded by the revelation of Baha'u'llah. I love this description of the dispensation of the Bab as meteoric. Meteoric. It was literally like a meteor, powerful, blazing, impressive, awe-inspiring, and just blast of energy, but short. Meteoric is such an incredible word to describe the dispensation of the Blessed Bab. And it was ordained to be very brief, but succeeded by the revelation of His Holiness Baha'u'llah. Accordingly, the Bab devised only the laws and teachings that were meant to undermine the established doctrines, as well as to prepare the followers for the revelation of Baha'u'llah. It's all those per se prescription that the beloved guardian talks about in Advent of Divine Justice that we studied in detail, talking about this rectitude of conduct, this chaste and holy life, this freedom from racial prejudices, is so echoed by the Blessed Bab, this rectitude of conduct, in the sense of the Blessed Bab preparing his army of God and preparing them to be able to have such an incredible character, to set to set it apart from the people of Islam in that day. So the people, and also for the Babis. So if they came into the presence of He whom God shall make manifest, they would be worthy of being in His presence. You see? Having that transformed character to be called, to change them into a new race of man. So the Blessed Bab, out of his love, enacted this standard of conduct, this character, and it was very rigid. And so he wanted his followers to be of the highest caliber, of the highest character. And so if they came into the presence of His Holiness Baha'u'llah, that they would be worthy to be in His presence. And this was almost, you could say it's almost the gift of the Blessed Bab to Baha'u'llah, to help shape the Babis to be able to be transformed to be Baha'is. You see, this is, so I see it almost as a love gift from the Blessed Bab to Baha'u'llah. And that's the power of this meteoric dispensation of the Blessed Bab. Such power, such infusion, such energy. The beloved guardian Shoaib Effendi explains that the revelation of the Bab was essentially in the nature of a religious and indeed social revolution, and its duration had therefore to be short, but full of tragic events, of sweeping and drastic reforms. These drastic measures enforced by the Bab and his followers were taken with the view of undermining the very foundations of Shia orthodoxy and thus paving the way for the coming of Baha'u'llah. To assert the independence of the new dispensation and to prepare also the ground for the approaching revelation of Baha'u'llah, the Bab had therefore to reveal very severe laws, even though most of them were never enforced. But the mere fact that he revealed them was in itself a proof of the independent character of his dispensation and was sufficient to create such widespread agitation and excite such opposition on the part of the clergy that led them to cause his eventual martyrdom. And this is from the Blessed Bab on the right. It says, when the tree of the Bayan attaineth its highest development, we shall bend it low as a token of adoration towards its Lord, who will appear in the person of him whom God shall make manifest. Perchance you may be privileged to glorify God as it befits his august self. The more you read of the Blessed Bab, you will see how much he loved Baha'u'llah, how much he loves Baha'u'llah. And the more you read of the Blessed Bab, you will be blown away with what an incredible, incredible ministry and period revolved around that life. And so I hope that this presentation also encourages you to dive in and study the Blessed Bab, because it's what an incredible character and soul and sacrifice he gave. So one of the major themes of the faith of Baha'u'llah is this principle of progressive revelation. And this is when we talked about the fundamental truths, these fundamental truths early on. This is one of the fundamental truths of the Baha'i faith. So if this is something that as every single Baha'i should master and be able to present very well, clearly, when someone asks you, what is the Baha'i faith? What are some of the things the Baha'i faith stands for, believes? This should be on the tip of your tongue. The principle of progressive revelations should be one of them, and it should be able to be enunciated very clearly. In paragraph 15, the beloved guardian also states that the Zoroastrian prophecy affirms the principle of progressive revelation, according to which every manifestation of God must needs vouchsafe to the peoples of his day a measure of divine guidance, ampler than any which a preceding and less receptive age could have received or appreciated. The concept of progressive revelation is one of the core principles of the Baha'i philosophy of religion. This principle answers some of the fundamental questions on the source of different religions, the concept of unity in diversity of religions, as well as the relationship between them. And later on, dear friends, as we cover paragraphs 42 through 52, which is in part 14, right now this is just the tail end of part 4, entering into part 5, we will explore the concepts of progressive revelation in much greater detail. The beloved guardian wanted the friends to really understand this concept and master it, as well as this is per se his letter outlining the fundamental truths of the Baha'i faith. So one of the main fundamental truths of the faith is this concept of progressive revelation. And so here I just put a small little image here. Progressive revelation is a core teaching in the Baha'i faith that suggests that religious truth is revealed by God progressively and cyclically over time through a series of divine messengers, and that these teachings are tailored to suit the needs of the time and place of their appearance. Very simply put, but an incredibly profound statement. And so there we are, dear friends. That concludes the study of those paragraphs, covering those paragraphs from last time. So now we are going to march into our next set of paragraphs. Let me share my screen on this one. Here we go. So our next paragraphs that we're going to be studying, coming up on paragraph 16 through 18, okay? 16 through 18 is another... Sorry, dear Tesfai, did you say something?
Yeah, before we go to the new sessions, I have some comments and some questions on the past one.
Oh, of course, please go ahead.
Is that okay? Yeah, because the way that I see now is to be in the Muslim after the days of Muhammad, there is no covenant that keeps them together, and then everybody is to be going their own way, and then the faith is to be, divided, and then so too much problem in Muslim. And that's my comment. But the question is, when the followers of Christians is to be, but the Christ is to be Christians, and the followers of Baha'u'llah is the Baha'is, and the followers of the Muhammad is they call them Islam. Why is that? Is there any specific meaning or something that is to be called Islam rather than Mohammedanism or something? I don't know. If you can explain more about these things, or maybe you can ask your dad.
Why the followers of religion are called certain things? Is that correct, your question?
No, what I mean is, the followers of the Christ, Christ.
Right.
Is a Christian.
Sure.
And the followers of Baha'u'llah is Baha'is.
Okay.
And the followers of Zoroastrian is Zoroastrianism. And Buddhism is Buddhist. And then Hindu is Hinduism. But when you come to Islam, the followers of Muhammad they call them Islam, not to be Muhammadism or any other name.
Well,
is there something special, different?
Well, in English, Mohammedans is a long name. And I've read places that they were called Mohammedans. Okay. The word Muslim is a much shorter word than Mohammedans. And so I'm sure Dr. Bait may have a better answer than I do, but Mohammedans, and also I believe, Dr. Bait can correct me on this, in Islam, per se, worshiping the prophet, having the name of the prophet than the religion. So that's why they go for Muslims than Mohammedans. They don't want to have the title of the messenger of God as as what they are, than actually being Muslims, which is the faith, not Mohammedans. Do you follow me, Testifier?
Yeah, I'm following you. I'm listening.
Yeah. So, Dr. Bait, could you? I don't know if I answered that very clearly, but I believe because in Islam, and they do not have any depictions or imagery of the messenger of God. So that's one reason why I think they do not classify themselves as Mohammedans. They classify themselves as Muslims because they don't want to classify themselves to the prophet himself, but to the faith of God. Am I correct, or how would you answer?
You're right, Essenjan. You're completely right about it. However, please remember that Christ is different than Jesus. Christ is a title. And when the Holy Spirit shines on Jesus, we call it Christ. Christ means the Messiah, the promised one. Okay? So Christians are not calling themselves Jesuits or things like that. They call Christ, which are after really the Holy Spirit. In the Baha'i faith also, Bahá'u'lláh is different than Mirza Hussein Ali, who is the physical person. It's the most great spirit that shines to Mirza Hussein Ali, and we call that Bahá'u'lláh, and that's equivalent of saying Christ. In Islam, the equivalent is Allah. That's the Holy Spirit, on the most great name in the Islamic dispensation. However, because the start of Islam had to fight so much with idol worshippers who had idols in Mecca, the worship of even thinking, relating it to a person, to them, it was something hard to do. And as a result, Muhammad tried to completely break them away from even having an image of a person. But we can call them Mohammedans, but the Muslims don't like that. But also remember, Islam is not just about this last religion that came by Muhammad. In the Quran, Islam is the religion that Moses brought, that Jesus brought, that Muhammad brought, and many other prophets, Abraham brought, and so on. So they call themselves Muslim, not Muslim, Muslim, relating to believers in all those religions. However, the average Muslim doesn't understand that and doesn't know that. He thinks that this is this latest religion called Islam, but Islam means all of those religions in the past, because Quran said Moses was Muslim, Christ was Muslim, and so on. So Abraham was Muslim. So Muslim means all religions. And also, it's not true that all religions calling themselves, for example, Hindu has nothing to do with any of the messengers of God. Hindu, it just relates to a name of a river that separates Indian subcontinent from Middle East.
Indus.
And the people who lived on the other side is a place called Hindustan, meaning the state of Hindus. But the religion really has nothing to do with Hindu. Hinduism is a general name given to them in the West. So there are these aspects that we need to consider. Therefore, also when we call ourselves Baha'is, we are really following that most great spirit that during this revelation shone to the world through the works that we saw from Mirza Hussain Ali. Okay, so if a person comes to tell us, why are you worshiping or relating yourself to a person? Well, we are not. We're talking about Bahá'u'lláh, which is really the reflection of the most great spirit in that messenger of God for this age. So in that sense, now you can see all these concepts coming together. Thank you, Asanja.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's very important when we talk about this concept of progressive revelation that we understand that there is one faith. There is one unfolding faith of God. All of these things called religions, this religion or that religion or this religion, they have created camps and created walls and dividers. And then people have put up blinders on that. And even wonderful Baha'is that even think that when I say I am a Baha'i, that is a divider, and when they say I'm a Baha'i, we cannot even think about anything else. We are all part and parcel of this faith of God. When I call myself I am a Baha'i, I am a lover of the faith of God. All past faiths are mine. And this is the reality, that we do not just say, that, I believe in His Holiness Baha'u'llah, the Blessed Bab, and, there was these other wonderful messengers of God back in the day. There was a Muhammad, there was this wonderful Jesus Christ, and then there was a whole bunch of other ones, and I love them too. But the Bab and Baha'u'llah, come on, people, that's really where it's at now. But that's not how it is. As a Baha'i, the whole panoply of faith is ours, all of it. And that is, my dear friends, what progressive revelation is. It's all or none. It's all or none. And that's the beauty of it. It's the whole faith of God is the gift that has been given to us. And that this is the love that God has been sending his divine teachers one after another. But humanity, because of its prejudices and because of its biases and its greed for power, has been sticking to their own, my teacher is the best attitude. And so they have been sticking and saying, I really like, Mr. or Mrs. J or whatever, and I don't want to progress to this one or that one, whoever has been coming, right? So they put their walls up. And the reality is, even wonderful Baha'is have this attitude because they don't want to go back and study the past dispensations because they've been hurt with their experiences. And the whole panoply of faith. That's why when we talk about vindication of the truth of Islam in the West, we have to understand that the whole scope of faith is ours. We have to love Islam. We have to have a solid understanding of the faith of God. So this is the reality. And when we talk about it, we have to understand what it is. And that's why it's very important to understand progressive revelation. So the concepts that we're going to be studying in paragraph 16 to 18 is really this love paragraphs. The beloved guardian is pulling out quotes from the prophecies attributing to the awesomeness of Baha'u'llah. It's so cool. So there's first we'll be looking at Bahá'í Dispensation, this incredible dispensation that is the fulfillment of all past revelations. And then the testimonies to the greatness of this revelation. So coming from the Spirit of truth, namely His Holiness Jesus Christ, Jehovah, then this most great announcement, namely coming from Quran. So this is going to be all the testimonies from the past revelations attributed to His Holiness Baha'u'llah, and the cycle of fulfillment that is the fulfillment of the coming of the Blessed Bab and Baha'u'llah. So let us read these paragraphs, and then we'll get into as always, our deepened study of these paragraphs. So our first reader, Miss Claudia, if you could dearly read this one for us.
All right. The Dispensation of Baha'u'llah, paragraphs under study, paragraph 16. The faith of Baha'u'llah should indeed be regarded, if we wish to be faithful to the tremendous implications of its message, as a culmination of a cycle, the final stage in a series of successive, preliminary, and progressive revelations. These, beginning with Adam and ending with the Bab, have paved the way and anticipated with an ever-increasing emphasis the advent of that day of days in which he who is promise of all ages should be made manifest.
Beautifully read, Miss Claudia. The day of days. Wow. And we're living in that day of days right now. So paragraph 17, let us get our next reader, Miss Pam, with her beautiful voice. Could you read this one for us?
To this truth, the utterances of Baha'u'llah abundantly testify. A mere reference to the claims which, in vehement language and with compelling power, he himself has repeatedly advanced, cannot but fully demonstrate the character of the revelation of which he was the chosen bearer. To the words that have streamed from his pen, the fountainhead of so impetuous a revelation, we should therefore direct our attention if we wish to obtain a clearer understanding of its importance and meaning. Whether in his assertion of the unprecedented claim he has advanced, or in his allusions to the mysterious forces he has released, whether in such passages as extol the glories of his long-awaited day, or magnify the station which they have recognized its hidden virtues will attain, Baha'u'llah and, to an almost equal extent, the Bab and Abdul Baha have bequeathed to posterity minds of such inestimable wealth as none of us who belong to this generation can befittingly estimate. Such testimonies bearing on this theme are impregnated with such power and reveal such beauty as only those who are versed in the languages in which they were originally revealed can claim to have sufficiently appreciated. So numerous are these testimonies that a whole volume would be required to be written in order to compile the most outstanding among them. All I can venture to attempt at present is to share with you only such passages as I have been able to glean from his voluminous, can you scroll up?
Writings. Sorry about that.
Okay, writings.
Sorry, wonderful, Ms. Pam. Excellently read. Thank you. So wonderfully read, Ms. Pam. Thank you. One of the things that I gleaned from this is that we will not be able to really appreciate unless we are well versed in the language in which they were originally revealed and claim to have sufficiently appreciated it. So the beloved guardian says at the end, all I can venture to attempt at the present is to share with you only such passages as I've been able to glean from his voluminous writings, talking in regards to the truths of Bahá'u'lláh. And lastly, paragraph 18. Let me see who, okay. Dear Zamruhijan, are you with us? Maybe. Okay. Maybe Miss Donna. Miss Donna?
I testify before God, proclaims Baha'u'lláh, to the greatness, the inconceivable greatness of this revelation. Again and again have we, in most of our tablets, borne witness to this truth, that mankind may be roused from its heedlessness. In this most mighty revelation, he unequivocally announces all the dispensations of the past have attained their highest, their final consummation. That which have been made manifest in its preeminent, this most exalted revelation stands unparalleled in the annals of the past, nor will future ages witness its like. He it is, referring to himself, he further proclaims, who in the Old Testament have been named Jehovah, who in the gospel have been designated as the Spirit of truth, and in the Quran acclaimed as the great announcement. But for him, no divine messenger would have been invested with the robe of prophethood, nor would any of the sacred scriptures have been revealed. To this bear witness all created things. The word which the one true God uttereth in this day, though that word be the most familiar and commonplace of terms, is invested with unique distinction. The generality of mankind is still immature. Had it acquired sufficient capacity, we would have bestowed upon it so great a measure of our knowledge that all who dwell on earth and in heaven would have found themselves, by virtue of the grace streaming from our pen, completely independent of all knowledge save the knowledge of God, and would have been securely established upon the throne of abiding tranquility. The pen of holiness, I solemnly affirm before God, have writ upon my snow white brow, and in characters of effulgent glory, these musk-scented and holy words. Behold, ye that dwell on earth, and ye denizens of heaven, bear witness, he in truth is your well-beloved. It is, whose like the world of creation have not been seen. He whose ravishing beauty have delighted the eye of God, the ordainer, the all-powerful, the incomparable.
Beautifully read, Miss Donna. Wow, wow, wow. This is another major common theme in the writings, is the incomparable, inconceivable greatness of this revelation. And so this is something that, again, encourage the friends to really delve into the writings so you can see all these places that we see this greatness of this revelation. And a wonderful place to start is the Gleanings from the Writings of Baha'u'llah. And what an incredible compilation that the beloved guardian did. I mean, the first, I think it's 18 of the first writings from Baha'u'llah are all about, this is the day of God. This is the day of God. And the beloved guardian really has compiled them all and hammers it home in the sense, and showing that this is the most incredible day that we are living in, that this is the day that is not going to be followed by night. What an incredible day. This is an incredible, inconceivable day of revelation that has come. And in this awesome paragraph of the beloved guardian, he's citing from the past dispensations. He's saying who Baha'u'llah is in relation to past dispensations. He is saying, here it says, he it is, referring to himself, he further proclaims, who in the Old Testament have been named Jehovah. His name in that dispensation was Jehovah. And in another dispensation, who in the gospel have been designated as the Spirit of Truth. Spirit of Truth is another title of Baha'u'llah. And then in the Quran, acclaimed as the Great Announcement. So these are titles of Baha'u'llah, and these are in different dispensations. So you can see the generality of mankind is still immature. This is incredible. I mean, when Miss Donna read this, I was again, this is what it says. Had they acquired sufficient capacity, what would have happened? What would have happened? We would have been bestowed upon it so great a measure of knowledge that all who dwell on earth and in heaven would have found themselves by virtue of the grace streaming from our pen, completely independent of all knowledge save the knowledge of God, and would have been securely established upon the throne of abiding tranquility. But we weren't there. We were immature. The generality of humanity was immature. In fact, when His Holiness Baha'u'llah came, he wrote tablets to the rulers of the world and said, follow me. But what happened? They turned a blind eye. They placed him in prison after prison, exile after exile, tortured and imprisoned and executed his followers, and banished him to the remotest and most miserable of prisons on this planet. The generality of mankind completely turned a blind eye to the faith of Baha'u'llah. And according to Promised Day is Come, Advent of Divine Justice, the writings of the beloved guardian, writings of His Holiness Abdul-Baha, His Holiness Baha'u'llah and the manifestations of God have not forgotten what mankind has done. And there is a thing called divine justice. Divine justice. You turn your blind eye to the manifestation of God. There is justice, and He has justice, and that is coming. It's not a singular event. And we talked about that in our course on Advent of Divine Justice. It's not a singular event that suddenly, I'm just going to, send a fireball. It's going to be in stages. And all of this is about bringing about opening humanity's eyes, bringing about humanity to be able to bring them about. So just like a school, if a student is not listening to the teacher, he has to implement changes so that the student will listen. So this is the reality. Humanity has not been listening to their headmaster. So let's now start progressing and start really. Yes, Vani Jejan, you have a wonderful hand up. Please, let's hear from you.
I just wanted to know where it says, but for him, no divine messenger would have been invested with the robe of prophethood, nor would any of the sacred scriptures have been revealed.
There it is, right?
Right here.
Right here. But for him, no divine messenger. Would you elaborate?
But for him, no divine messenger would have been invested with the robe of prophethood, nor would any of the sacred scriptures have been revealed. It's right here in this paragraph 18. Where is it in the sacred scriptures of the past? Is that your question?
Yes. Would you?
I will have to search for that, but this is from the Beloved Guardian, and the Beloved Guardian is quoting, I believe, but I would have to pull the quotes and everything, and I will send that to the class, okay?
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you so much. Okay, moving on, dear friends, paragraphs 16 through 18. The Beloved Guardian here is now, Shoghi Effendi initially identifies the revelation of Baha'u'llah as the culmination of a cycle that began with Adam and ended with the Blessed Bab. And now Baha'u'llah is the supreme manifestation of God in this universal cycle that began with Adam around 6,000 years ago. Shoghi Effendi then highlights the uniqueness of this age as the day of days by citing a number of statements by Baha'u'llah. This is the day of days. So the period before the revelation of Baha'u'llah and the period before the revelation of the Blessed Bab is called the prophetic cycle. So the period before these twin manifestations is called the prophetic cycle. As all the manifestations of God in this cycle made prophecies concerning the coming of Baha'u'llah. The cycle initiated by Baha'u'llah and the Blessed Bab is called the cycle of fulfillment, as he has fulfilled all the prophecies made during the prophetic cycle. And we should direct our attention to the claims made by Baha'u'llah in his writings if we wish to acquire a better understanding of the nature and power of his revelation. So now let's get into a further and deeper study of these paragraphs. In paragraph 16, the Beloved Guardian explains that the Baha'i faith is this culmination of a cycle that started with Adam around 6,000 years ago and continued through to the appearance of Muhammad and ended with the Blessed Bab. This is a reference to the cycle of prophecy, or the Adamic cycle, which has, with the coming of Baha'u'llah, given way to the cycle of fulfillment. So here's an easy depiction, okay? Adam, indigenous religions, Krishna, Moses, Zoroaster, Buddha, His Holiness Jesus Christ, Muhammad, then the Blessed Bab, okay? Cycle of prophecy, okay? Then from the Blessed Bab going forward, this is now the cycle of fulfillment has started. Okay, so this is the twin manifestations, the Blessed Bab and Baha'u'llah. It's the cycle of fulfillment with the coming of Baha'u'llah. It's the cycle of fulfillment. Okay, and this is the start of the universal cycle, the Baha'i cycle. Okay, so that just helps as an illustration so you can see it, get an understanding of it. In some answered questions, His Holiness Abdul Baha describes two types of cycles. And you can see the references on the bottom. The first cycle represents the dispensation of a manifestation of God, through which the laws and ordinances revealed by him prevail. Each of the manifestations of God has a cycle, wherein his religion and his law are in full force and effect. When his cycle is ended through the advent of a new manifestation, a new cycle begins. So the first one was saying a cycle could be just a cycle of a specific manifestation. So this is one cycle. Okay, that's what the first one was saying. The second cycle, defined by Abdu'l-Baha, is the universal cycle. A universal cycle in the world of existence comprises a vast span of time and countless ages and epochs. In such a cycle, the manifestations of God shine forth in the visible realm until a universal and supreme manifestation makes the world the focal center of divine splendors, and through his revelation brings it to the stage of maturity. The duration of the cycle he ushers in is very long indeed. So, as to the first point, these were, into the first part, these could be small cycles in a period of a manifestation of God. They're called dispensations. And this is this Adamic cycle, the cycle of prophecy, okay? But the cycle of fulfillment, which is the universal cycle mentioned by Abdu'l-Baha, this universal and supreme manifestation, when it comes, His Holiness Abdu'l-Baha says, this duration of the cycle he ushers in is very long indeed. And this cycle is 500,000 years. So this is not is not short on any level. So Abdu'l-Baha describes the relationship between the two defined cycles. This is from Some Answered Questions. He says, thus cycles are inaugurated, concluded, and renewed until a universal cycle is completed in the world of existence and momentous events transpire which efface every record and trace of the past. Then an universal cycle begins in the world. And this is from His Holiness Abdu'l-Baha on the right. It says, we must recognize the sun, no matter from what dawning point it may shine forth, be it Mosaic, Abrahamic, or any personal point of orientation. Whatever, for we are lovers of sunlight and not of orientation. That is such a boom, beautiful words from His Holiness Abdu'l-Baha. And at this very small paragraph, actually, I'm going to get my little ones to memorize this, because this, in essence, is what the principle that we just talked about, the principle of when we talked about this principle that all the manifestations of God have been coming from different points at different times, and this. So
that's
this,
the dispensation cycle, right?
Yes, exactly. So this progressive revelation. So this incredible principle of progressive revelation, this statement from His Holiness Abdu'l-Baha states, we must recognize the sun, no matter from what dawning point it may shine forth, be it Mosaic, Abrahamic, or any personal point of orientation whatever. For we are lovers of sunlight, not of orientation. And if you think of what we are as a Baha'i, we are not lovers of Mirza Hossein Ali. We are lovers of Bahá'u'lláh. Bahá'u'lláh, that most great essence, the animated essence that animated that Mirza Hossein Ali, that animated the camel driver Muhammad, that animated the carpenter in Israel, in the Palestinian area, His Holiness Jesus Christ, that animated the Prince of Egypt, Moses, that animated the Prince Buddha, and animated each one of these to be taking whole civilizations. This is the same essence, that we are the followers of light. And really, that's what a Baha'i means, is a follower of the light. Are we followers of the light? So if we are followers of the light, we should be knowledgeable about the light and be able to speak about the light and be lovers of the light and prove the light. Because many people are saying this is the light, but they're actually following darkness. And the reality is, there's some are even calling, light darkness by saying, when they say, for example, in our last section, we're talking about Islam, they're saying bad things about Islam, misconceptions. So they're calling light darkness. So we have to vindicate the truths and say, this is light. But make sure what we're talking about actually is the light. So we have to be knowledgeable about it. So that's another important thing. Okay, moving on, dear friends. All the manifestations of God appearing before Baha'u'llah made prophecies to a day of days when the promise of all ages should be manifest. That is why the period in which these manifestations appeared is known as the cycle of prophecy. The cycle that commenced with the appearance of Baha'u'llah the Blessed Bab is known as the cycle of fulfillment, since he has fulfilled all the prophecies made during that cycle of prophecy. The dispensation of the Bab provided this link between the cycles of prophecy and fulfillment and prepared the people for the coming of the Blessed Baha'u'llah, the glory of God, the inaugurator of the long-awaited millennium and the originator of a new universal cycle. The context in which the cycles of prophecy and fulfillment are defined is different from the context of cycles, referring to the dispensation of an individual manifestation of God in relation to the universal cycle. The cycles of prophecy and fulfillment primarily distinguish the nature and differences of two periods in human history, before and after Baha'u'llah. So there's two periods, and the ministry and dispensation of the Blessed Bab is that link between these two periods. At the inception of a universal cycle, humanity is not mature enough. If you recall that quote from Abdul Baha, he said, if they were mature enough, we would have given everything, right? But this is at the inception of a universal human cycle, humanity is not mature enough to receive the supreme manifestation of God. Hence, there are many divine revelations to prepare humanity mentally and spiritually to receive the supreme manifestation. Baha'u'llah is the supreme manifestation of God in the current universal cycle that began with Adam. Although Baha'u'llah is not the first manifestation of God for this universal cycle, he is the ultimate purpose for all the revelations before him. Hence, it can be said that he is in fact the inaugurator and the originator of this universal cycle, as his will has been driving the course of events during the cycle of prophecy. A very good example is a tree. The purpose of a fruit tree is to give fruit, right?
Right.
So, for example, you want to grow an apple tree. You plant that apple tree first as a seed, and it goes into the ground. It's a seed, and that is. Let me go back to. And that's maybe the first dispensation, the Adam. And that seed is growing and growing, and it's developing, and then eventually it's bearing, it's now got little offshoots and it's growing, it's a sapling, and it's still growing. And eventually, by the time of the dispensations of His Holiness Jesus Christ, it's now, it's getting to a small tree, and it's a small saplings, and it's growing, and it's getting branches and everything. By the time it reaches the dispensations of Muhammad and the Bab, it's now a tree with leaves and everything, and it's growing. And now, for the first time in this dispensation of Baha'u'llah, fruit has appeared. And this is all the work of these past manifestations of God, prophesizing, saying, don't worry, this will be a fruit tree. Just stay strong, work hard, do what God has told you. This is going to be a fruit tree. And finally, in this day, that's why it's called the Day of Days, the Day of God. We're living in it. Fruit has appeared. Now the product, Baha'u'llah, has appeared. And now this is the fruit. You see? And that once it's a fruit tree, it will always be a fruit tree. Because this is the cycle of fulfillment. Now, all the manifestations of God has spoken about this time, and now it has appeared. The fruit has come, and the fruit is good, as they say. And that's from Bible. The fruit is good. And so this is the cycle of fulfillment, and it has appeared. So I just wanted to share that with you, okay?
Yes, and,
Please.
when His Holiness Christ was asked by his followers, how do we know you when you come back?
Right.
He gives the exact example of what you just gave.
Right.
He said, from the fruits, you will recognize me. From the fruits. And of course, the fruit of Baha'u'llah is the revelation he's brought. And this is the age of fulfillment, and hence the age of fruition. He recognizes it now. Why do it brought him? Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
You know, there is, may I say something?
Please, of course, your testify. Go ahead.
Yeah, you know, in the Christians and the Muslims, I wish they understand these cycles of prophecies and the Adamic cycle, how life is to be keep going on in the progressive revelation, because they are thinking the Muslims, the day of judgment is to be final, and then the Christians are thinking also there is end of the world, and then most of the time whenever you are telling them something, they don't believe, and then only Jesus the only one, and Muslim is also the seed of the prophet, and they give you the day of judgment. They never open their mind, and then they don't want to let you to make them understand. So this is the point that we have supposed to deliver to them, but I don't know how we can make them understand.
Yes, dear Tesfaya. First, we have to understand ourselves. So first, we have to teach ourselves and be able to present these subjects. Do we understand the Bible ourselves? Do we understand the Quran ourselves? And if we understand it, can we be able to present and state that when they state that in the, Quranically or biblically, it says, he is the light, the way, the truth, and no one shall pass through him except, through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Or in the Quran is saying he is the seal of the prophets or whatever, and saying he is the final, the end, and, whatever. Can we be able to show biblically or Quranically that their understanding is correct, because their actual understanding is correct? By saying Christ is the truth, the light, the way, the end, that's true. And by saying actually he is the, he is the seal of the prophets, actually, again, that is true too. But it's the understanding of it, So it's, what does it mean? So we have to be able to study it, understand it. So we also have to know it really well. And that's when we read earlier, we have a really strong understanding, because Christ is the way, the truth, the light. And no one can pass to him except through Christ. It's like you can't bypass chapter 4 and jump to chapter 6. You have to go through Christ. And Christ is the Lord. So you have to go through Christ. And he is the Spirit of truth. And you have to have that love in your heart. How can you bypass Christ? Because Christ is Baha'u'llah, Baha'u'llah is Christ. You have to have Christ in your heart. And that's the reality. And for me, being a Baha'i, and growing up, I studied Christ and I fell in love with Christ. And every Baha'i should fall in love with Christ. And every Baha'i should fall in love with Muhammad. And every Baha'i should fall in love with His Holiness Buddha and all of them, because what it does is the faith opens your eyes to the whole panoply and scope of faith of God. And you should be the most awesome Christian as a Baha'i, because this is what it means to be a true Baha'i, a true lover of all humanity. And this is the most awesome gift that we have, is to be able to see the totality of faith as unfolding chapters in the revelation of God, and not be saying, this is it, and putting handcuffs on God and saying, God, He only revealed this to this certain amount of people, and that's it. God doesn't reveal anymore. I find it humorous. Or He only revealed this much, and it's only to these certain people in this small area of the world, and those people are blessed. The rest of humanity are cursed and damned and doomed, and they'll burn in the fires of hell and damnation for all of eternity. And that's not so. God has loved all humanity and has revealed these divine messengers at different points, at different times, and is being gradually assisting humanity to an ever-advancing civilization. It's an incredible principle, and I encourage you all to refine your tongue in presentation of this deep principle of progressive revelation, because the more that you speak it and teach it and believe it, you'll be able to teach it. That's something I encourage you all to practice. Let me check our time. We've got 10 minutes, dear friends. Let's roll, as they say. So we're going to now testimonies of his revelations. These are from Baha'u'llah. These are so cool and so awesome, and they're just wow. So this is coming from paragraph 17. The beloved guardian is highlighting the significance of the statements made by Baha'u'llah on the character of his revelation. And he's making these following points. We should direct our attention to the claims made by Baha'u'llah in his writings if we wish to acquire a better understanding of the nature and power of his revelation. So we need to focus on his claims, and if we wish to acquire a better understanding of the nature and power of his revelation. What is Baha'u'llah claiming? It's very important, so we have to focus on that. Baha'u'llah, as well as the Blessed Bab and Abdul Baha, have left fathomless oceans of sacred writings on the greatness of the revelation of Baha'u'llah. And in these writings, we find Baha'u'llah's assertion of the unparalleled claims advanced by him, Baha'u'llah's references to the mysterious forces released through his revelation, statements exalting the glories of his long-awaited day, and passages extolling the station that they who have recognized its hidden virtues will attain. And in paragraph 17, it also said, unless you really have an understanding of the original languages, you will not be able to appreciate all of the extent of these, the incredibleness, the awesomeness of this revelation, unless you really have a understanding of this, of the original languages. And then at the concluding part of paragraph 17, I'll scroll back so you can see it. So he says, in which they are originally revealed and can claim to have sufficiently appreciated. And so then the beloved guardian says at the very end, so he says, all I can venture to attempt at present is to share with you only such passages as I have been able to glean from his voluminous writings. God, it shows the beloved guardian's humility. I'm just only sharing a little bit of the voluminous writings that I've been able to glean. But it's an incredible, and it shows, he says, only those who are well versed in the original languages, originally revealed, can claim to have sufficiently appreciated this ocean and gems. And one of the titles here is the mysterious forces of this revelation attributed to Baha'u'llah, Abdul Baha. The original title of Secret of Divine Civilization, which is His Holiness Abdul Baha's masterwork when he was a young man. His Holiness Baha'u'llah asked him to write this book called Secret of Divine Civilization. It's a treatise, and it was called Secret of Divine Civilization. That's the current title. But back in the day, it was called Mysterious Forces of Civilization. And this title is right here, the Mysterious Forces, right? So the beloved guardian is talking about these mysterious forces. And this is the power, these mysterious forces that have emanated from these figures, namely Baha'u'llah, the Blessed Baha, Abdul Baha, these central figures. Okay, moving on. And we're right here. In paragraph 18, the beloved guardian is citing statements made by Baha'u'llah on the potency of his revelation. Potency. These are the key concepts from paragraph 18. The testimony of Baha'u'llah on the greatness of his revelation. All the past dispensations have achieved their ultimate perfection through this revelation of Baha'u'llah. That which is made manifest in the revelation of Baha'u'llah is unique among all the past and future revelations. Baha'u'llah is the Jehovah mentioned in the Bible. Baha'u'llah is the spirit of truth named in the gospel. And Baha'u'llah is the great announcement referred to in the Quran. If not for Baha'u'llah, none of the earlier divine messengers would have been invested with the station of prophethood, and none of the sacred scriptures would have been revealed. Because they can only be a prophet if they are prophesying about someone, right? You're prophesying about someone, something to come. So if it wasn't for Baha'u'llah, how could you be a prophet? So it's all thanks be to Baha'u'llah. That's why the beloved guardian said, every word uttered by Baha'u'llah is invested with a unique distinction. And I encourage you all to study Kitab-i-Iran also. There's at the very end of Kitab-i-Iran, I think it's paragraph, I need to study Kitab-i-Iran again, but it says at the very end, it's the last few paragraphs of Kitab-i-Iran, and it's where His Holiness Baha'u'llah says, every word has 72 meanings. Every word is invested with 72 meanings. So, I mean, when he says every word uttered by Baha'u'llah is invested with a unique distinction, every word has power and meaning and is creative, transformative, is life-giving. If the human race were mature enough, Baha'u'llah would have revealed a measure of divine knowledge that would have made humanity independent of all knowledge save the knowledge of God. This was such a cool, when the beloved guardian quoted that from Baha'u'llah, if they were reached that level of maturity, the whole world would have been completely a different scale and scope. The world of creation has not previously seen anyone like the like of Baha'u'llah. All right, and then we're moving to Spirit of Truth, checking our time. Let's conclude there, dear friends, because then we're going to transition to all these now characters, Spirit of Truth. Then we go to the Jehovah and the great announcement, and then we'll end. But that is really good for tonight. Any questions at our current time?
Thank you so much.
Anytime, dear Manijejan. And any thoughts, learnings before we have our closing prayer?
I think you answered my question. I
Excellent.
got my answer to
Yeah, mostly from dear Dr. Bayat, I'm sure.
No, from you, the number E, the last page that you mentioned.
Good, excellent. I'm happy.
Yes, and Jan, you referred to that passage from the Beloved Guardian. We know that Baha'u'lláh, in the course of his ministry, he revealed a lot of tablets, but he ordered the believers to go and wash them. And his statement was that humanity has not reached the maturity to receive those parts of revelation.
That's right.
In fact, at times it would have been a complete long tablet.
Right.
So if humanity had reached the level of maturity that was needed, we would have had a lot more. But at the moment, we have 100 volumes.
More than we can
right?
handle.
So I think we should be happy.
So that means that they are not translated, those?
Oh, yes. A lot of the writings are not translated yet. That's right. A great deal is not translated, but all the important principles and guidance and so on, even from big tablets that are not translated, those sections are translated. And increasingly, we are having more and more. And there are a lot of, if you like, unofficial translations that is going around by Bahá'í scholars that constantly go through the writings and prepare them. And those who are interested can go and read them, but they are called unofficial translations because they need to have the blessings of the House of Justice before they become canonic, if you like, of the Baha'i writings. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Bayat. Yes, there's a relatively small percentage of the totality of the writings are translated. I mean, it's such an incredible volume of writings were revealed by His Holiness Baha'u'llah, and I believe even less is translated from the Blessed Bab, and in the future, that will also be made available, and Abdul Baha and the writings, His Holiness, the Beloved Guardian, wrote in English, but he also had prayers in Persian and other languages, and those will eventually be authorized for translation when the Universal House of Justice gives the authorization.
I think the point is that the Baha'u'llah's writings is not like a newspaper that is easy. You can put it in Google and get the translation.
Exactly.
They have multiple, every word has multiple meanings and multiple facets. And when you have a sentence made up of, let's say, 50 words, and every one of them have many, many meanings, the interpreter is going to be, the translator is going to really suffer. In the end, perhaps settle on what understands of it and put it into a single sentence. So we are going to have for centuries Baha'i scholars working on the writings, translating them, and constantly giving us new shades of meanings and new perspective on Baha'u'llah's writing. So not only we have a library, but every book in that library is a library on its own. So we just have to be patient and work on them. Thank you.
We need to do hard work, man.
Some of the most incredible writings of His Holiness Baha'u'llah, the odes, have been provisionally translated. And these are incredible poems of Baha'u'llah. And these have such complexity and rhyme and rhythm and beauty. And they're in Persian, and they you can look for them. They're online. Masnavi Mubarak, Qasidiya Ragha'i. They're incredible poems of Baha'u'llah that have rhyme and rhythm and beauty, and they're the closest that I could, give us an inkling to would be tragedies, like that are in, for example, Homer's Odyssey, from the Greco-Roman, and it has this type of tragedy. So it has this poetic, rhyme and meter, and it goes, and it's talking about the tragedy of the most great lover, namely Bahá'u'lláh, and he have appeared into the world, and this tragedy of the world turning a blind eye to him, and this lover as constantly encircled in a world of hate, and a world, it's like a thorns on all sides, but the rose is there, and it's this constant love poem. And you see this in many of his writings in poetry, and it's very hard to translate the aspect of Persian poetry that has this where every verse rhymes and has this beautiful meter and the English is limited, and it doesn't come out quite right and having the right words, and it kind of stumbles along, and it might not have the quite correct translation. And then you also have to have the right understanding of what the intent of that was. So it's not just I understand the translation, but do you understand the intent of what was really being meant by there, and maybe the history of what the events were going on during that time, to have a proper understanding. So it's a lot more than just, I know Farsi, I can translate things. So it's a lot more complex.
I think in the future, for most tablets of Baha'u'llah, books would be written, because that's the only way to treat them, not just a single sentence translation. I attempted once to really get a better understanding of the 7 values. I've ended up written 600-page book on it. I wanted to understand better the 4 values of Baha'u'llah. I've written a maybe 200-page book on the subject, and it still is inadequate, to the extent that it's now 20 years I've written these, and I still don't feel like publishing them, because I'm aware of how inadequate my comprehension is. As Ehsan was explaining, we need to understand a lot more. And as human beings also, we need to change. Our perspectives need to change to begin to see what Baha'u'llah is talking about. So the time for it will come. At the moment, we have plenty to read, but I think the future generations will have a lot more to read, because those will be all translated, not sentence by sentence, but practically for every passage of it, there will be pages after pages of explanation. Thank you.
But the prayers are partially now, I see some from Abdul Baha and from Baha'u'llah is to be translated as House of Justice, revealing recently that we saw last year or something like that. So that means there are still some more.
Oh, for sure. You're absolutely right. Yeah, authorized translations are coming out because, there are other prayers revealed by Abdul Baha. And so that every so often, the research department will send authorized translations of prayers revealed by, whether it's Abdul Baha or Baha'u'llah. Yeah.
There are a group of very dedicated Baha'i scholars who most of what they do is to translate, and they do that under the auspices of the Universal House of Justice. And whenever, as they work, and whenever every piece of work becomes complete, then the House of Justice would authorize those, and then those be presented to the Baha'i community. And it's hard work, really, it's hard work, and they're working on it. It's so wonderful to know so many Baha'i scholars, Persian, Arabic, as well as Western believers, who are all working together to really make these translations possible. Thank you.
It's amazing, yeah. Very amazing.
Well, thank you very much, dear friends. We're at our close. And so, dear friends, Next week, we will continue marching along and finish up this part and get into greater understanding on these prophecies in talking about His Holiness Baha'u'llah. But for tonight, let us have our closing prayer and wishing all the best. So who would like to share a closing prayer?
Oh my God, thou seest me in my lowliness and weakness, occupied with the greatest undertaking, determined to raise thy word among the masses and to spread thy teaching among thy people. How can I succeed unless thou assist me with the breath of the Holy Spirit? Help me to triumph by the host of thy glorious kingdom, and shower upon me thy confirmations, which alone can change a gnat into an eagle, a drop of water into rivers and seas, and an atom into light and suns. O my Lord, assist me with thy triumphant and effective might, so that my tongue may utter thy praises and my attributes among thy praises and attributes among all people, and my soul overflow with the wine of thy love and knowledge. Thou art omnipotent and the doer of whatsoever thou willest.
Thank you, dear Manish-e-Jan. Thank you, every one of you. Wish you all a wonderful night and wonderful week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
you.
All right, have a wonderful
Thank
night.
you.
Good night.
Now,
Good night.
Hello.